To hold Vincennes, Clark sent 3 soldiers, all he could spare. Six months later, the fort was retaken by British Lieutenant Governor Henry Hamilton, called the Hair Buyer for his willingness to purchase rebel scalps. When Clark heard of the loss of Vincennes, he lamented, "I would have bound myself for 7 years a slave to have 500 troops." What he did have were 150 troops and few supplies. In the chill of February 1779, Clark began the long, hazardous trek to take back Vincennes. In places, the country was flooded 5 miles across with chest-deep, icy water. Rarely did the men wear dry clothes or sleep on dry ground. Not one deserted.
They began to think themselves superior to other men, and that neither the rivers or seasons could stop their progress. George Rogers Clark.
"17 days after setting out, Clark's small band arrived a mile from the fort. To give the illusion of several columns, Clark divided his men and, as in the biblical Battle of Jericho, told them to make as much noise as they could. Colonel Hamilton assumed some drunken locals were firing off their guns until one of his men fell from a rifle shot. The next morning, Clark demanded that Hamilton surrender immediately and unconditionally. Hamilton refused. That afternoon, Clark forced Hamilton's hand. His men had just captured an Indian raiding party, including the young Ottawa chief Makut Mong. Clark ordered the Indians tomahawked in full view of the fort. As the first warrior was killed, the others began singing their own death songs. One of the rebels turned to Makut Mong and buried the tomahawk in his skull. The chief took it out and handed it back. The executioner struck 2 more blows before killing him, while the soldiers in the fort watched.
Clark, like all great leaders, is a master showman. Hair Buyer Hamilton, sitting there, being intimidated by this little display, had, of course, been paying bounties for women and children's scalps. So you're dealing in an area where both sides have dirty hands. By our standards, it's not ethical conduct. Did it work? Yeah, you bet. It bluffed him right into surrendering.
Clark was still wiping blood from his hands when he met Hamilton. The next morning, the British commander surrendered the fort.